working on my videos again.
Yeah.
I've been so busy with like final projects. It's like I just want to like I have like scripts for my videos all done. Like I'm ready to record them, edit them, put them all together.
You know, I can't get
So
over that
excited.
one film. What was it called? Flow.
Oh, that was animated all in Blender.
Unbelievable. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. So now, whenever I'm watching TV now, and I'm watching some things that clearly have some graphical stuff in the background,
You're
I'm
trying to
looking at
figure
my
out.
wife. I'm like, that's Blender. There's no doubt in my mind that was done in Blender. I know it was.
You're trying to figure out how they did it.
Yeah, and you try to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, like
And Kevin, I assume your partner is also really, really interested in hearing about the intricacies of the
Oh,
computer
no.
graphics and all these
I
different
just rolled
commercials.
her eyes.
Mine loves it. She can listen to me talk about this stuff for hours.
Eventually, the room empties. Is what happens. My kids also go. I said, "Where'd everybody go?"
yeah, I had
You can just call me and I'll listen.
I'm fascinated by this. I'm presently surprised by the animation side.
Yeah, yeah. My son definitely like. Oh, you want to know how they did this? No, I don't, Dad.
yeah,
Here, let me show you. And then you know what I'll do? What I did do is I pulled up Backpack's video. I said, "Here, watch this one. Watch what this guy did. Watch what Backpack did before she left." So you see this thing with Rachel Ward sitting there, you know, and you're like, "Oh my God, how'd they do that?" I said, "And this is simple one compared to Flow."
yeah.
I don't know if you saw my comment. I said, "I hope you're not holding us for Backpack as the benchmark."
No. So-
Backpack was kind of off the charts.
And unfortunately, won't be here today.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss her. She
Going to China.
have a good time in China.
Yeah. It should be an amazing plan. The plan is to
Another one of your classes in the future too.
probably. Yeah, plan is to be over there for at least a month or so.
As a teacher, also, I always had a student like that, by the way, where really wanted my time and would spend time before and after. Yeah, there's always one or two.
Yeah, having
I like when they do that myself, as long as I have the time.
no, it's really valuable. I mean, there's like having some sort of generational span in the classroom is really helpful. So helpful that like I've suggested this in meetings, like some sort of scholarship-ish thing for returning students, just to encourage them and do nothing but benefit straight out of high school students. So
Well, SEC doesn't have a lot of money, and so what I told them, I said, "Listen, you guys need business acumen." I said, "Do something where you're advertising this and advertise towards 50-year-old plus, in addition to everything else you're doing." Why? Well, because generally they have money because they're working, and they have time, and they'll come at night and things that was nothing, absolutely nothing. I'm just shocked at the lack of the business acumen at SCC.
I have a lot to say here. No, I don't want to put on camera.
No,
So
you don't need to, because I know how academics is. You hire academics, and so when the administration is made out of people that are academics, they're gonna act like academics, they're not gonna act like business people. I'm like, well, SEC has a really good criminal justice. They have a
Yeah.
formal U.S. Marshal, they've got Phoenix police officers, they have Arizona State police officers that are all teaching, they have some forensic people. They don't advertise it. I said, you should be advertising the heck out of these 4 or 5 people. There should be posters with their pictures that they know that people can come here and do this forensic stuff. Nope.
yeah, it's definitely everything could be better marketed.
Perfect way to say it. There's almost no marketing.
Yeah, there's also the issue of we're in this town where the marketing for Grand Canyon is I'll call it aggressive.
And
ASU is ASU, yeah.
no.
Okay, why did my camera just decide to not work on the last day of class? It's on.
How are you
Oh,
feeling, by the way?
there we go.
Your throat sore?
No, yesterday I
very, very good at all this rendering and everything. It was quick.
Yeah, but you have a pretty new one, right? What?
Yeah.
What?
Mine is one generation old, so there's the new one that just came out. I have the one right before that. M4 Pro,
Okay.
and it was great. The only downside I had is I only have a 500 gigabyte drive, so I had to use an external drive. If I were to buy it again, I'd buy a big internal drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
The external drive's fine, but
I mean, having multiple drives is where it's at for doing this kind of work.
I have them on both.
Yeah, I mean, there's the backup issue, and then when you really start to move a lot of data around, then you can start to leverage sort of RAID situations where you can, get two pipes going into the computer at the same time. So that's all pretty good. Okay, now I have restored everything. And it looks like I'm back. Okay, I am back. All right, looking forward to checking out everybody's final portfolios here. Let me have this up, and the speed grader thing, and this, and that.
Did you want a donut? There's donuts.
No, not right now. I'm not usually late. I just don't want to take off on that.
I understand.
All right, where are we? Is this Deanna's? Okay, there it is. Let's get everybody's volume up. Over here. That's up. This is louder. And here we go.
And this is my new kitchen video. So I thought it was more interesting with having the chair be in front of the camera and the candle being not in the center and more to the side. So then I had the camera zoom into the glass at the end just because I thought this shot was really nice.
Oh, that's very nice. That's very clear. Okay, NPR. Yeah, these look. Yeah, this is a good combination of line weight and the processing on the actual color, I think, is pretty successful here. There's this issue, which is really just in flux right now, is that, yeah, we discussed this. Did we discuss this here? The line weight issue? Because we were discussing it in the character class. When you go with scene grease pencil or object grease pencil, the default now is that the lines are in world space, meaning that when you get closer, because that's what they are. The grease pencil lines, right? They're not a render time thing, okay? They're not like the post-processing effects that happen in the compositing window, right? That we see that happen, right? You've done enough work now that you've seen, when you render, you see in the window now, you see the raw render come in, and then depending on how much post-processing you have, there's like a blip and you see it do all the effects, right? Grease pencil is not that. Grease pencil is a much more complicated thing where it's thinking about where the camera is, and then it's actually, projecting the camera view into the 3D space, figuring out where the edges are or the grease pencil marked objects are, then making actual curves. The way that you draw a curve in Blender, it will procedurally draw the curves on the edge of the object based on the camera view for that frame. Then that gets sent over and you can access it as a separate pass like we talked about. But the way Grease Pencil is working right now is that the default is that the thickness of the lines is in world space, which I understand because of the way Grease Pencil works. Like technically, that makes sense. Artistically, I think it's one of there's not much application for it. What do we want? We want the lines to be in screen space. This is more typical in the things that you would use Grease Pencil for, referencing other sort of art styles. The lines are going to be in screen space. When you draw something, you're using the same pencil, and so the lines for something that are closer to the camera are going to be the same thickness as the lines for something that's further away from the camera, right? That's just how drawing works. However, because Grease Pencil is in this like transition state here, there used to be a box, just a straight up box you could check to switch back and forth from these two. And now the process for getting the lines in screen space is quite frankly not super clear, right? There's got to be like you got to get some geometry nodes involved and a bunch of other things here. I'm sure this will get fixed imminently here, hopefully by the end of the year, or certainly hopefully by next semester, so that it goes back to just checking a box to get back between these two things. Because this is one of the primary things you would want to control in Grease Pencil. Yes, Marcus?
Yeah, I wanted to find out how to do screen space because I didn't like how they were like they look thinner in the back because they were quite literally just further back.
Yeah, and
Find an answer, I'm like, I'm just gonna go on.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten it to happen on my computer, and yeah, this is a lot of, there's the job of me presenting information for you, and then there's also the job of me trying to curate the information that I think is worth learning. And this is totally not worth learning at this point because it's going to change in 4 months, and the amount of steps you need to go through to make it happen is absurd, right? For something that is applicable to most art styles, right? You would want, you don't use a thicker paintbrush for something that's closer in the scene, right? That's not, traditional art is innately two-dimensional in that way, right? And so this is and it shows here in the close-ups, right? These close-ups seem a little bit more artistically wonky than the ones where Deanna had her camera a little bit further back, and because the camera is a little bit further back, all the lines were a little bit thinner because of this issue, right? So keep an eye out. Hopefully in Blender 5.3 or whatever the next imminent release is. I think it's 5.3, 5.2 I think is officially released now. We're in that neighborhood. I'm sure once this gets fixed, there'll be a deluge of YouTube tutorials like with little thumbnails that say like, "Thank God this got fixed." Yes, there should just be a global Grease Pencil checkbox to be world space or screen space, because that's clearly how it should work. It's just in a transitionary period right now where it doesn't quite work like that. So keep that in mind. Yeah, I wanted to try and do this, but then, with the amount of time I had to sort of research everything, it just seemed like totally beyond the pale to worry about at this point, right? There's only so much time in class. Do I want to eat up 2 hours discussing a bunch of geometry node setups so that we can just do this one thing that should really be a checkbox? No. So there's that. Yeah, the contrast and change in value here in this part of the image looks good. The thing here that's maybe a little bit off is the framing, right? Like there's a lot of sort of awkward negative space. You can use negative space in an interesting way, but this particular angle doesn't quite do that. So keep that in mind here. And then you're moving the camera on this one in a way that's not super cinematic here, right? And so again, would it be okay to move the camera like this and render it in an NPR style? My reaction to that would be that seems like a more artistically successful strategy, right? Once you're going to render something in an NPR style, it doesn't look realistic. And so you're not engaging in the formidable history of cinema, right? Where we've photographed things in a specific way for specific reasons throughout the history of cinema. And the way that you're using the camera is part of the storytelling. So when you render something in a realistic fashion, you're engaging with that history of cinema in a much more direct way versus the history of, animated image, right? Where it could just be whatever anyone drew at that point. So this is, again, what we do here in this class is like this really meta skill, right? In terms of, it's like a totally postmodern practice. What do we want it to look like? In the same class, we'll have people who only want to make hand-drawn things that look like Bob's Burgers, along with people who want to do quasi-realistic, fantastical architectural renderings, right? And all of that is in this class, right? We don't have a separate class for like crazy architecture, and then one for just hand-drawn cartoons. It's all underneath our animation umbrella here, right? Essentially, it's just, are there pixels moving on the screen? Okay, that's that class, right? But then when you break it down, you're like, oh, wow, that's, every year it's continually astonishing to me that like there's such a wide umbrella here for what we're looking at.
And then for the NPR, I did the
Kawahara?
that's about it.
I'm assuming a Japanese name, I think.
This was the outline, and then with it, and then like how it kind of.
Yeah. So some basic sort of brightness work here after this effect may be useful, but doing this here, she hasn't separated out the grease pencil pass. And so the grease pencil, this is a good technique for integrating the grease pencil into the render, right? And in some instances you'd want to do that, maybe in other instances not. But in this case, it really brings it together in that case, because you're running an effect on top of both things. As we discussed previously, grease pencil is not a box in this window. It's a totally separate sort of thing.
Has like a blurring effect on it, kind of blends it together. And yeah, something I learned over the course of the semester. I actually feel like I learned so much in this semester. I only used Blender like one time before, so I definitely wouldn't have known how to make any of this stuff without this class. I definitely wouldn't know how to make the wine glasses or how to make like the forks and the table and stuff. I would have probably made them really badly, but yeah, I think I learned a lot in this class. I also had no idea how to make textures, so that was also really helpful. And I'll definitely use these skills or the things I learned to make things that I want to make, and make textures that I need outside of class. Something that I want to know how to make, I want to learn how to make and model is probably like characters, learning how to make like faces and texturing them. So I might try to learn to do that over the summer. Yeah, this class was really fun and helpful, and I'm actually really happy with this kitchen scene. Yeah.
Cool. That's great to hear. Yeah, we do more, character modeling issues, that type of thing in 287, right? So our current schedule is that that's a spring class. It's going on right now. It won't be in the fall, and it'll be in the spring, right? The enrollment in the digital media arts and the video game programs are such that the entry-level classes, 184, 185, those run every semester. In fact, we have, almost 3 sections of 184 running every semester now. But then the classes that are towards the end of the program, the second year classes, the enrollment just doesn't pan out we don't have enough to run multiple sections of that. The way the institution works is you have to have the enrollment before you can bring on the teachers, right? So if we had those classes just overflowing, then it'd be a situation where we could bring in some other adjuncts to start to build that up. So that's kind of where that's at. So keep that in mind. Those of you working towards the degree or a degree, that is something I have to really emphasize, the business of going to college, right? This gets de-emphasized here in terms of or some students, I think it's a combination of things. Some students don't want to pay attention to it, and I would encourage you to try to change that, right? Know, what do you need in the program? What's coming up? Talking to the advisor at least once a year, preferably once a semester, right? In terms of knowing, because they have a good idea about when things are going to be offered, right? And so that can really help steer this so you don't get into a situation where you've completed everything, but the class you need is only offered once a year, where you're going to need to wait even longer. And if you just would have structured things a little bit differently and took this instead of that at this time, then everything will move a little bit more expeditiously there. And then also, as you get further in the program, the idea of stacking tons of classes in a single semester really is not, unless you really don't have anything else on your plate. I would encourage you to think about quality over quantity here, right? Maybe one less class so that you could do a better job in the classes you did enroll in versus a really mediocre job in more classes, right? We will possibly take an extra 6 months to complete your degree, maybe, but ultimately being able to focus on the skill in a much deeper way is more valuable long-term in terms of doing this. Cool, very nice, Deanna. Let's look at Deanna's actual video here. Nice. Yeah, and so this in general looks pretty good. The thinking about the cinematic camera view here. This not a particularly cinematic camera movement. The other class where we're going to address a bunch of that is offered in the fall. That's AVC 240, cinematography and directing for animation. Right. The class I gave about moving your camera for this, sequence here, expand that over an entire semester where we talk about that at length, right? I just kind of gave you a condensed version of that. And so there's that. And then, the render quality looks pretty good here. You can see, now where applying more samples, what that's going to get you, right? And so the areas where there's more complicated stuff, subsurface scattering, shadow from a translucent thing, right? And so the light is being refracted and then ending up here in the table. Notice that this will look wobblier, right? Than see how that the shadow specifically from the glass, right? So that's more work there, and something that you wouldn't necessarily see in a single render preview. You have to see it in the animation, in the camera movement, to see the wobbliness, right? So just another reinforcement of my advice that the amount of samples you need to get a good looking still is going to be less than the amount of samples you need to get a solid animation where there's not going to be any of that wobbliness, right? That denoising is really great. It allows us to use a fraction of the samples that you would need to get a less noisy image, but you still need to throw more effort from the computer at something that's going to be animated, something where the camera's moving, right? So here, you're able to throw more samples at this. The depth of field looks really nice here with the glow. Good use of the lighting and the object, right? We have this rim light here really helps define the shape of the object, right? Versus just sort of some random highlight that's hanging out like in the middle of the object, which doesn't really serve to actually help the viewer understand the shape of the thing they're looking at. Yeah, so this one here, right, this ends up looking, just not particularly, I don't know. I mean, it's just a different sort of look. Right here is an instance where selecting the top of the wine glass and using the not greatly named Mark Freestyle would make the whole top of the wine glass get a line around it, right? Which would make more sense artistically for what's happening in this frame here, right? Rather than the front of this not having that, right? It definitely sort of sticks out in terms of the visual logic of the image there, right? So, that sort of speaks to the other idea of something I'd like everyone to take away from the class, which is no defaults, right? You turn on these things like Grease Pencil and they do a thing and you're like, oh, wow. But then take the time to be like, that's great. But almost always just the default thing is not 100% of what you wanted. Like try to actually impose your will on the algorithm there, right? Like how can I tune this to be what I want versus just I click the box and now I'm doing this extra thing here, right? Because that's usually not as artistically interesting. And then also that's what everyone else is doing, right? If you're just producing images that just have all the boxes checked, there's a lot of other people doing that, right? So you want to, I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end, but like how can you use these tools to develop your own artistic identity, right? I think that may be the only path forward in a world where anyone can type something into a box and get an image, right? What is it going to be about your image making that is unique and identifying? And no, that's Deanna. There we go. Here's Kate's. Nice. Yeah, really great. Very cinematic, right? The pacing here, yeah, the addition of the music here, which I didn't really emphasize when we were doing it, which I usually do, that not only serves to like make it much more of a complete project. Like if you showed this to someone, here's the thing, they'd be like, yeah, that's a thing. Like it's a movie. It's got a soundtrack. We're moving the camera. It looks cinematic. But then when it comes time to edit the pacing of everything, having some sort of music on the timeline not only works in terms of like the internal emotional state in connecting with the vibe of whatever it is that you're doing, but then also just the temporal sequencing of the editing, right? Most editors do this. They get the soundtrack on the timeline and you can edit to the music, right? This is, right, I have this long background in music. It's one of the strongest things I bring to teaching this class is that a lot of students coming into this class have this background in drawing and they can draw great, but they haven't really thought about things that actually sequence in time, right? Music is only that. It's just a sequence of abstract waves in time organized in a way that unfolds in an interesting pattern. And if you're going to animate something, it now exists in time. Yes, it has to look visually compelling, but it also needs to be a compelling temporal experience, in terms of the speed, pacing, and rate at which things unfold. And so, Kate's definitely doing that here. This felt like a thing as soon as we hit play because we kind of edited along to the music there, and the pacing of the edits seemed to make sense with the sounds that we were hearing, right? This is definitely 100% true here. The whole of the audio plus visual is greater than just the things by themselves, right? You get this combined meta experience when you put these together. This is something which is either ignored or sometimes completely de-emphasized when people are doing this, is that they're spending, like 99% of time on the visual part, and then at the last second they, throw something on the timeline. But when someone experiences what they've made, it is not this ratio, right? It's the sound. If you throw a different soundtrack on the same thing, you can have profoundly different experiences. It changes it fundamentally, right? And so I would encourage everybody to take more time to think about that earlier in the process there.
Hello, my name is Kate, and here is my cinematic video that I finished with all my renders. So this is initially like an establishing shot. I just wanted to get the whole scenery and my table down, as well as my cutlery and my plates. This one's a little bit closer to get a little better look at the glass and the cutlery as well, and see the reflectiveness on the plate. Okay. This is
I think good use of depth of field here, right? You didn't crank it up to like a weird extent, but you kept enough of the image in focus that we can appreciate what it is that you've made, but also it has like a photographic identity, right? So taking photography class would help immensely here, right? In terms of not making a bunch of, once you use a real camera and dial in the focus on something, it will really help your sensibilities in terms of not making a bunch of like really strange decisions here, right? Where again, the advantage, the good news is that we can do anything we want. The bad news is we can do anything we want, right? Where you just sort of, the infinity containing poor artistic decisions is infinitely large, right? So there's that.
This is an over-the-top shot. I'm going to pause it real quick, because what I wanted to do was to highlight some of the details here in my cutlery, and also to have this reflection. For this shot, just a bit, what I did was I put two lights, and I believe near the corner of the table, so that it could highlight kind of like the edges of the metal, and also just so that the background wouldn't look too dark, because that's something that happened with my first draft of this shot, is that the background looked really dark, so you couldn't see the chairs, and I think the chairs are still really important. And then it also highlights the metal tear over here, well, the wear, sorry, of the metal along the table as well. And you get to see some of the details of also the tablecloth. And this one is my favorite just because it lets you just look at all of the glass, and it's very sparkly, very beautiful. Oh, light it again. Let me get the. Okay,
So the wobbliness there, the sparkliness, right? Like there's I would say it's like right on the edge there, right? Because some of it's a result of the denoising wobble, and then some of it is a result of if there's bump or normal in there. And so that's another thing where going from animation, from still to animation, that's another adjustment you might want to make, is taking the strength of the normal channels and maybe nudging those down. Because what looked okay in a still is going to look flickery, and perhaps it's a common thing, right? In the video games, we deal with this too. People make these things with these strong normal channels, they throw them into their video game, and now everything's just like flickering all over the screen, right? And so, but if we just turn the normal strength of the normal channel down, you still get the appearance of substance and tactile feel. It's just that the light isn't reacting in this like really unstable way all the time.
Once again, the computer doesn't read them entirely as how they're rendered. But yeah, so here you can see the details of the texture of my tablecloth. This is like a pretty good establishing shot. I just wanted everything to be seen on the table. Let me see if I can get my other ones. For this shot, I kind of just wanted it to feel like how you would look sitting down at the chairs, kind of looking at the candle, just kind of this a little more immersive shot that I made. Let's see. This one, as I explained again, is just for the textures, just to see everything set up, because I wanted to put some attention and detail onto the cutlery, but also everything else. Once again, I set up my...
Yeah, so this is a shot, like I really like this angle. This is like where we're culturally shifting, perhaps, is that now, like before, drones doing this kind of like total top-down thing inside may have been like kind of possible, right? And outside almost totally impossible. But now, because there's a ton, I mean, you see this in like every other commercial now. All of these, make the real world kind of look like a top-down video game by putting the drone up there, putting the camera straight down. And so this is definitely we're more used to this shot and understanding this shot now. Whereas like 10 years ago, probably not the case.
I believe I kept that same lighting, which ended up turning into, I forgot the name of it, but the lighting in the background for this shot. I just kind of wanted to show off the glass, and it looks very pretty. Just, I liked it a lot. And here are my two NPRs. I wanted to first show them off before showing the notes, because I'd have to open Blender. So for this one, I just wanted it to look like a very soft painting. I wanted it to look really pink, like if the theme around it was just a lot of soft colors. I just like the color pink. And yeah, and for the second one, I was like, what if the dinner was a little evil and spooky? Just kind of to look like it's somewhere dark, somewhere more gritty. That's how. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, it's like a gritty graphic novel kind of look for what's going on. Yeah, so two different. Good, you were able to get two like very different NPR looks out of it here. Did you use grease pencil on this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird that this. I don't know why that would have been split up like that. There. I mean, it works for the image, right? This kind of just sort of strange outline. Oh, no, that's the. Oh, yeah, it's a thinner glass there.
Yeah, for some reason, what it liked to do was to look at the rim of the glass and just like explode it with more lines. And I was like, I don't know why.
Oh, did you use the multiple, whatever it is, duplicate lines or multiple lines?
I think I just subdivided.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, if you use the subdivide plus the noise thing, then things would end up kind of like that, where it kind of,
Yeah, I wanted it to look like really sketchy, but the cups just.
yeah. Yeah, so this works. The chairs look really successful, right? Because of the geometry of the chairs. Like this, I think looks believably sketchy, right? Whereas like here and here, it didn't quite get there. And so this would be a case where instead of using the scene grease pencil, maybe you put these two objects in a collection and then use a collection grease pencil so that they can have their own GP settings, right? Because grease pencil, as I discussed, is actual geometry, not a post-processing effect. The geometry of the object affects the grease pencil line creation, right? And so, as we know now, the geometry for the chair versus the geometry for the candle are radically different. And so, being able to dial in different grease pencil settings on those objects would be the thing to like totally take it to the next level there.
How it turned out, I think it's easier to explain with the nodes. Before I go into the nodes, I think it would be really good to explain that for my grease pencil, I actually changed the base color to be white, so that we'd get the white lines that appear in the render, as you can see here.
Awesome. Also, not taking the defaults, right? You didn't just make black grease pencil lines because that's the default.
Let's see. Oh boy. So first I use a little bit of the painting settings, the classic and I believe the newer one. And let's see. Linear lighting. Okay, I think that's what I use in order to add this yellowish tint onto the things. You can see it especially here on the tablecloth. Let me see. Post your eyes. Oh, that's what I use in order to get some of this harsher lighting, just to make the area around it look really dark. Let me see the hue. I believe that's what I use just to make the area around it a little more darker, a little more bluish. What did I do with the screen? I think it was also just a color. Oh no, that's what I used to basically mix these two together. Let's see. Set alpha. I think this is for what's in the grease pencil. Yep. And I brought it back with an alpha over. I used some of the linear light once again to make it a little more darker, give it the more bluish tint, and then I brought it into the output. Hopefully, yeah, that's how I understood it.
Yeah, great. So once we're into the NPR world here, knowing what the individual nodes do, that's the level you want to get to, so that then you can just sort of put them together like Lego bricks and just see what you get, right? Like, do I know some specific formulas or recipes to get kind of this thing? Yeah, but mostly I have those handful of recipes and then I'm just sort of playing with it at this point. Like, what can I do here? Yeah, this looks really great. The only thing is like maybe a Kurohara processing on the grease pencil would put more of it in the same visual space there. It would break up the grease pencil a little bit more, which is especially right here would help.
And for the second one, I don't have the original camera angle for it, which is a loss. But okay, here we have what makes it look like a painting. Once again, I used the classic and the new version. With the classic, I decided to make it a little bit bluer, so that when it would be added together, it would give us this nice purple. We get the mix, and then we use I use the color dodge in order to make it look a little bit more pinkish. will this overlay, yeah, so, and then I use another overlay for more pink because I really wanted it to come through really strongly. Once again, I use another node that gave us the paint texture, just because the others didn't come through as strongly, and this one kind of pushed it a little further because I did really want it to look like a painting. And then for the screen, again, for the pink, I was really trying to change this up, but I usually work more with Photoshop. But yeah, those are my nodes and how I've currently understood them. It's a lot. And throughout the semester, what I learned was basically a lot of just how Blender works, how to decide what workflow I need to do, what is effective topology, how to set up cycles, how to get...
Yeah, so once again, let me call that out, right? The knowing kind of where you want to end up makes a big difference here, because it could be totally different workflow to get to that point. This is one of the things slightly different from traditional art making. If I want to draw a picture, I have paper, I have pencil, all of that, that's the main workflow requirements. Here, what program you're using, what the way you're constructing the models, all this kind of stuff could be drastically different depending on the different output.
Get what's it called, the extensions going. Let me see. There's just a lot that I learned. Before, I didn't know a thing about Blender. Now I know about subdivisions. You know, never just crank that up. Doing just enough. You know, making sure you're not overloading your computer. How to work with like UV maps.
Right. So the just enough thing, really good guiding principle for the computer and for the human, right? In terms of like, now everyone knows, if I had to ask you in a survey, does doing this kind of work take more time or less time than you previously anticipated, right? Everyone's going to say more time, right? And so this is part of the thing to really come to grips with artistically, is that you only have so much time to work on these things, right? Even if it's some open-ended personal project, right? Where you're like, there is no deadline for this. False. There is a deadline, right? You only have, there's the big deadline, but then there's also you only have so much motivation to work on a thing, right? Where you really got to strike while the iron is hot there, in terms of like, okay, well, I feel, motivated and compelled to bring this thing into existence. And you got to try to make it possible to do the thing within that window, right? There's very few things that are just this ongoing, never-ending, totally open-ended amount of time to work on things. There's also this principle, I forget the name of the principle off the top of my head, is that any task, the idea is that any task will expand to fill the allotted amount of time. And that's fairly true in a lot of instances, where it's just if I give you 2 weeks, this is part of the reason we keep this weekly schedule. Could some of the projects have used 2 weeks? Perhaps. Could you have done some of the projects in half a week? Yeah. But having this weekly schedule just sort of makes everybody confront that issue throughout the semester. Is that, okay, well, I always only have a week to do this. What can I get done in a week, right? Because this, especially if you want to do this work professionally, where you're working with clients and there will always be a deadline, they'll be like, what can I get done for the client within this amount of time, right? Within the amount of people that I have. And in this town, both of those answers tend to be small, not much time, and very few people. So maximizing your ability to work in a self-contained way while getting a lot of bang for your buck is really important.
The Substance Painter, learning how to go back and forth between that and Blender, using the nodes to set up textures and then editing them, which I did with this little gold plate for the candle, and just learning that, having it a little bit too much is better than too little. And yeah, I just learned a ton about Blender. I can't believe that I've done all of this in this class, and I'm like really grateful. Okay, so what could I use these skills for in the future? I think I really like using the modeling to scale. I think that if I ever run into issues where I can't get like a background maybe for a drawing or an animation, now I know that I could make models to scale, rooms. I remember that we did our first animation with the room that we could see through the walls. I think that would be really helpful to set up and just to have it spin. It would give me a lot of angles to work with. It'd be very versatile. And how will what am I gonna build in the future to grow my skills? I think I'm really gonna try messing around a lot with the compositing nodes. I feel like I could have understood that a little bit more. It could save me the trip from Photoshop, even though that's, you know, where I'm more comfortable with. Just learning how to use Blender more effectively. And yeah, I'd like to learn a little bit more about modeling, and yeah.
Yeah, so especially because you've got existing Photoshop skills, just being able to make, like, is it always better to do something with nodes versus layers? Right, this is the big structural issue. It's two different ways of thinking about things. And the answer is there's instances where either is a good idea, right? It's not, all the programs are integrating nodal stuff now to make them more flexible. And so there's a lot of like cultural momentum around nodes. Everything should be nodes. Why do it in anything but nodes? But the complexity of that is not insignificant. And if you know, well, I could knock this out in 2 minutes in Photoshop because it would be this layer, this layer, this layer, and this layer, well, then you should go to Photoshop and do that. There's no rules right here. Now, like, we're doing everything in Blender because it's part of the class and everything else. But once you get out, you know, outside the class now, everything is on the table, right? And so not only doing post-processing with effects in Photoshop, but doing something, you know, like using it as reference, paint over, right? You just render it out of here, bring it into Photoshop, and instead of just running effects in Photoshop, you're actually drawing over the thing, right? Where that is useful not only in terms of like previs, right? If you had to show the client like, okay, this is great, but we want a cat on the table. Okay, well, 3D modeling a cat and putting it like that, that's a significant time investment. You know enough to know that now, right? Versus rendering it out and maybe just sketching a cat in there so the client can then decide like, you know what, we actually don't want a cat in there. Like now we see the preview, which happens a lot. And so that would be a really, you know, an example of doing a paint over thing or a compositing thing in that instance, right? Or even just taking a PNG of a cat and putting it in there. You could do that in Blender. It's significantly more clicks than just dragging it into Photoshop and Control-T'ing it where it needs to be in the image, right? So combining your 2D and 3D skills, trying to not totally separate them. That once I make the 3D decision, everything needs to be 3D. Not true, right? Especially if we're making still images using this, really everything is on the table because you're just ending up with pixels at the end of the day anyway, right? And then also, as long as the pixels look good, no one cares, right? Outside of this room and people in the industry, you know, it's interesting to find out like, oh, I did this using blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. That's all great, and I like knowing those things. But in terms of people who hire people to do this kind of work, does the final image look great and compelling? That's all they care about, not really how you got there, right? So keep that in mind.
I'd like to have more projects in the future where I just, you know, try to build things off of reference. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Cool. Great work this semester,
Hello,
Kate.
Miss Kate.
Really, really, really great. And then I did talk to the IT people and look at your email today and tomorrow. I think we can work something out so you can hold on to the computer for the summer so that you can continue to do stuff. So that'll be great. You may have to bring it in and then check it back out. I don't know. Like, I'm going back and forth with them about that right now. Because you don't have another machine to work on right now, right?
No, I usually just like either wait until like the next semester or I just don't work on my projects till.
Right. I mean, I think it'd be great if you had something so that if you wanted to, you could work on whatever you wanted over the summer. Are you taking summer classes?
No.
Yeah, I mean, the summer class thing, yeah, it's pretty much my policy at this point to not teach summer classes, mostly for my own sanity, but like also it's a condensed semester, right? And, with 16 weeks, it's pretty full. With 12 weeks, it's like a little bananas. Especially, could you like really like dig in and do it in 12 weeks? Yeah. Are a lot of students in that mindset over the summer where we're going to like really dig in? No. And neither am I, right? Frankly, it's just too hot to even think like that here during that time of the year. So, yeah, our GCC attitude towards summer classes is not doing a bunch of that in here. And I don't think a lot of the other schools either are. Remember, the primary animation schools, it's us in Mesa. If you have to choose, if class is not offered here and you have to take somewhere else, my blanket recommendation, I know most of the people who teach over at Mesa, and I think they're great. And then Paradise Valley also has some classes, and that would be a good option. Here's Kevin.
Hello, this is our last project of the year, and I wanted to show off my table. I wanted to show off the glare of the candles, the glare coming off the table itself and the chair and the plates. I wanted to show the lighting, which is coming off of the candles themselves, as well as a light that's underneath the table to show some glare off of the chairs, etc., as well as the lighting just from the surrounding area itself. The goal here was to show off the glasses and the table, etc., in a way that was focused in on the lights, as well as the glare off of the candles and the dishes, etc. From the video, I chose 3 stills. I wanted to highlight those things which I thought were important. Here you can see the glare off of the candles themselves, as well as how some of the glasses in fact are shiny. My second is a side view of the table, so you see the whole table. You can see the glare off the chair down here, and my napkin just askew, giving it a lived-in kind of look, as well as my silverware here is a little bit off. This is a knife and some of these other things. And then the final picture, I wanted to really highlight in on what was on the table. You'll see I have a little noise in the front and in the back. The glasses here to the right are the most in focus. The rest are very shiny and glowing and various degrees of focus here. But you can see, I think I've done very well in replicating glass as well as the silverware. I then made some non-photorealistic pictures of my table. This first one is pure posterized, which I actually like this. I like the dark on the left and the right, focusing in on my table. To this, I did enhance it a little bit. I thought it might be good to change it a little bit and then add some of those lines, which I did here. You can see I've added some lines, etc. here. Some of the things show up much better. Again, it's very dark on the left and the right. But when I use the other one, which I think is called Kurawa, on the setup, this is the one that I really liked. It gives it an image of it. It looks painted, and it looks painted like in a quick brush.
Monet style. The further away you go, it would look more clear, whereas the closer you get, it looks less clear. I love the tunnel and how that's looking with this. And though you might not expect a table with chairs and set her in a tunnel, when you put all this together, it works pretty good. I'm thinking about over the summer, I'm going to add a vase with flowers to this and do this and replicate this exact same thing and actually do a painting. That's what I'm thinking about it. But I enjoyed this one. This is my favorite picture of this.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely like the most successful NPR render there. You mean the only thing is like the shadows on the ground here. And so what you would need to, because there's no ground, right, is just the HDR, you need a shadow catcher here, which is a couple nodes. I would need to look it up right now. Essentially, you make a plane, and the plane has a shadow catcher material on it, so that the light, the chairs do cast a shadow on the plane, but the rest of the plane outside of the shadows would be transparent. So you would see the HDR there. And so that's the terminology you'd be looking for there, creating a shadow catcher. And yeah, last time I did it in Blender, it was slightly different process for Eevee versus Cycles. This is one of those rendering techniques. It's not going to be exactly the same in both. Maybe it is now. I'd have to look. But that's, the only thing. Or, right, just bringing this into Photoshop and just sort of roughing in some shadows there, right? Like there's, again, don't, if you needed to have it done tomorrow, that would be where I would go, right? Not trying to like decipher because again, the Blender tutorial thing, I'm trying to put together a much bigger sort of like big resource page for everybody, so I can really point everyone to go there first in terms of like, these are the Blender resources that I think are good. Because again, this is, it's the same joke I've been making all semester. The good news is there's a lot of Blender resources. The bad news is there's a lot of Blender resources, right? Where there's just sort of like, and the signal to noise ratio is like, there's more noise, right? Like, which is, I don't know, a good problem to have. There's a lot of people talking about Blender, but there's a lot of just sort of like, older stuff, and then also things of questionable quality, right? So dialing in on that kind of thing, it's hard to know whether a Blender feature is like a stable, performant thing where everyone has come to a consensus about how how to do this, or whether it's like a quasi edge case where there's like a couple different ways to do this, and that part of the program has changed significantly, so it's hard to dial in exactly what I'm doing here. Right, and this would be one of those cases.
Now this is a composite view of the one. You'll see that what I did is I have these render layers that are being pulled into the poster eyes, which then goes over to A here. I have the Kuwahara coming in here, etc., which is the poster eyes, and then coming over to this, coming over to my image. And so if you change some of these things, you can see the sharpness changes, etc., which I really liked what this did. And I did try different ones. You see the Pixelate over here. I didn't really like it, so I didn't do one of those. That was my choice. The poster eyes, you can go direct. You can just go direct here and see what happens, and all kinds of different things happen. So it's kind of fun to do this. Come back down to A, changes it a little bit. Ooh, he stayed there. Didn't know that was going to happen. Anyway, so as you can see, it has a really nice.
Yeah, for me and other people here, like the ability to play with the post-processing in nodes, I think is easier than sort of Photoshop layers in that way. I mean, again, I've been using nodes for like most of my adult life, so like my brain just kind of like works like this. So I think it's much easier to experiment and have fun with this. But and it should also deepen your Photoshop knowledge here, right? Now that you understand, like, it's this and this and this and this, the sequencing of the thing, even when you're laying it out in layers, there should be a clear, conceptual idea of what's happening here, right? Because essentially, as you lay things out in layers in Photoshop, it's like, as you go down the layer stack, it's like working from left to right across the nodal diagram, right? Because it's like we do, or actually, I'm sorry, the direction would be up in Photoshop, the layer stack would be to the right over here, roughly. And that level of understanding should help not only in Photoshop, but it should also help your Substance Painter, right? Substance Painter, because Substance Painter is essentially, what do they call it now? Like 5D chess that they play in Star Trek, where it's like the chess boards all over the place at the same time, right? Substance Painter is like that for Photoshop. It's like, okay, you're pretty good. Can you run 5 Photoshops at the same time and know what's happening with all the blend modes? That's what Substance Painter is, right? And so having that understanding, this is important for that.
So doing this one with the Kuwahara, doing this one posterized, and then I got some lines and one. It all seems to work out pretty well. So, what did I learn? I learned that Blender is something I can use for my 3D modeling for printing, 3D printing. I learned that we can do anything in Blender here, which is kind of cool. And the animation aspect of 3D of Blender is strong and challenging. That's one of the things I learned. I'm going to use these skills going forward in my 3D printing, as well as presenting. I'll be presenting some of my files and documents this way, so that I
Yeah, so this pre-visualization,
copy my art into this stuff and use it to present it.
yeah, that part of it, that being able to pre-visualize a space, right? Like I've gotten a lot of work, not because the final project was a Blender thing, but because I used Blender to make an animated video pre-visualizing the thing I wanted to do. And that, being able to, this is something, talk about with my artist friends constantly, is that the people not in this room, not in this class, everyone who's here is kind of self-selected in that you have a visual, almost all of us have some sort of visual internal consciousness, where if I ask you to visualize an apple, you can see it. This is not ubiquitous, right? The idea that everyone can do this is not true. And so a lot of times you're working or being hired by people who simply just, through no fault of their own, they just don't, it's not the way they exist. They conjure the imagery like almost everyone in this class, right? The class kind of self-selects for that. People are not getting into this. People who can't do that are not attracted to doing this, right? And so being able to lay it out for potential employers, because you don't know if they are in that group or not, in terms of being able to actually, hey, imagine this thing. When someone starts describing it to me, I'm immediately putting it together. And I'm sure everyone in this class has the same internal experience, but that's not the case. And so when you're trying to get hired by these kind of people, the being able to, like, as accurately as possible, lay it out is really, really valuable, right? Because asking them to be like, oh, don't you see it's going to be awesome? No, they don't see, right? They just can't, it's just not available to them. And so being able to actually lay the whole thing out, right? Because that's what Blender, that's the value proposition of Blender here. Is like you can manifest an image of, almost anything, right? Very specifically here. So,
My wife can't see.
yeah.
She's no clue. I have to do something like this for her.
Yeah.
She sees it.
Yeah. It's when you can do this, the things you're attracted to and the people you surround yourself with, almost everyone I know, personally, who I spend some significant time with, falls into this category, right? And so then you interact with people who aren't in that category, and it becomes like, oh, wait, right. It's like a thing, right? And I'm not saying it's bad or inferior or anything. It's just a different way of existing. And it makes it hard to communicate these kind of innately visual ideas, right? Because this is where there's a lot to say here. This is some really interesting translation issues in that, yes, you can describe things with words, but there's definitely things always lost in translation there, right? It's not a perfect thing, which kind of manifests in the AI situation where you're using prompts to describe images, right? No matter how technically well you would do that, there would be, it's a fraught conversion, translation.
Show off some of the work I'm doing, whether it's in class or else. And next, I'm going to work on that painting one. I'm doing some models already in Blender, and I'm also, the cool thing about Blender I learned, I just want you to know this, there are a lot of STL files that I can pull off the internet, and some of them have extremely heavy mesh that needs to be corrected, as well as when I'm doing 3D scanning. It needs correction, and I've learned in Blender how to correct those meshes, at least make them so that they're palatable and can then be printed on the 3D printer. Without correcting those, it's almost impossible. So with that, I just want to tell you, Casey, that I had a great time in this class, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot of things I didn't know about, meaning the Blender cinema, and had a really good time doing this. So with that being said, thanks for a great class. And by the way, I want to commend everybody on their projects too. You guys did some amazing things, and I tell you, I tell you, it really was something watching all of you and how you progressed. And I hope to take some more classes in this area in the future. Anyway, with that, everybody take care.
Super. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you. That's great. Yeah, the along those lines, the future here, in no guarantee yet, but spring 2027. Yeah, young people like that. You look forward to this. Every time you write down a date, you're like, the digital fabrication class. So, doing more of exactly what Kevin described here, taking things from Blender and then printing them, because we've got the new Steam Center opening in the fall, and now we'll have all the facilities over there. So that'll be, I forget the number because we just put it on the schedule for the first time. It's like 260 something. Yeah, the spring schedule is not public yet. I'll put a thing on Discord with the actual number.
Sign up for something like that. Scottsdale has 0.
Yeah.
Mesa has some. So, and I'm like right in between
Mm-hmm.
here and Mesa. You know what I mean? I can go either way. Or Paradise Valley actually is the closest after us.
Mm. Yeah.
I'll go. I don't care. I'll try it.
Yeah, it'll be great. I mean, the plan is to use the 3D printers and the laser cutters and that's like the guy Ben at the
they're animals and they work great. And
yeah.
Keep going and they're open source, so you can keep upgrading them.
Yeah, Ben at the Forge is helped in the purchasing stage. Yeah.
He would say stay away from Bamboo because Bamboo has cat-true software. They don't like that.
Yeah. So we'll be doing more of that in that class, because this class is in the animation program. It's an OR with 3D design, which is what everyone has been taking up until now because no one was offering this class, and now we'll be able to offer this class, and you won't need to get approval for it. It's in the program. You just be able to take this instead of the 3D design class. So that'll be great. And yeah, I'm sure the first semester will be adventurous, but it'd be super cool. And so then, yeah, all those Chicago sports bobbleheads, like.
I wanna scan them.
Right. And then make your own for like the lesser known Bulls players, right? Like, does Horace Grant have his own bobblehead?
He might
I
have-
feel like he would.
He might have had one.
Yeah.
I have his shoe. I
Y-
won his shoes.
Like shoes that Horace Grant wore?
Yeah. They're
Really?
18. He had big feet.
Yeah, that was a
Isn't that funny? My ex somehow got him because I left them in the basement when we broke up, but they're somewhere in that house. Size 18 Horace Grant Chicago Bulls shoes.
wow.
And they're up like in the basement, up in the, where the boards are. I put them up there. I'm sure they're still there. It's kind of funny. I forgot all about that.
Wow, I just sort of pulled that name out of a hat. That's awesome. Horace Grant's shoes. Yeah, and the Sketchfab links. Here's Kate's one. Sketchfab. Yeah, I pulled this one up on my phone too. And this, were you getting this? Where like the orbiting is kind of strange.
Yeah, on my phones or even when I just do it on this little tab on my laptop, it's really strong.
Check the settings and then.
Is it something I have to fix?
I mean, no, usually it's good. So the thing here I think may be happening is that there may have been some other object that you uploaded in the scene that's like way out somewhere, because usually I don't touch this. I think you can adjust it. Like, I believe the default Sketchfab behavior is that it looks at the whole scene and then puts a dot like in the center of the stuff.
Could it be like lights and stuff?
I mean, I don't think it would. We haven't run into this before. Like, usually when people upload stuff, it just seems pretty good. So I think there may just be a stray thing out in the hinterlands that's causing. Yeah, that. I mean, and I don't believe it's lights, because then we would have run into this previously, with people having lights that were. What?
I got rid of the background, but I re-uploaded it, so.
Yeah. Well, that maybe the anchor point was picked based on the background, and so. Yeah, I mean, before you spend a whole bunch of time doing it, I would just try to make a new Sketchfab upload and see if you get the same thing or not. Because like, once again, the redo, don't fix is really applicable here, right? Because it's one thing to try and like fix the Blender file where like theoretically you have total control over what's happening, right? Here, at the end of the semester, everyone always says the same things. Like, most people are fine. Like, oh yeah, I was able to upload to Sketchfab, no problem. And then there's like a lot of people, some 20 to 30% who's like, I had a bunch of problems. And every semester I'm trying to like but Sketchfab's kind of a black box. And not only is it a black box, like in that we can't get in and like know exactly what it's doing to the stuff, it's also a moving black box. We don't, the stuff inside the box is changing and we don't know how, right? So that's like a really, crappy fix situation where this is sort of like, oh man, I don't know. So I would just try another upload and see if that fixes it. And if it does, then I would just move on with my life and find something else to do with my time. Like, the part of doing this work is like, where if I fix this, am I going to be able to leverage that in the future? And is it going to be important to know that kind of information? So sometimes the answer to that is yes. Other times the answer to that is definitely not. And so that would be something to keep in mind there. And then this is Kevin's Sketchfab link. Nice.
My
Yeah.
glasses kind of are, I actually went in, I could change them to solid in Sketchfab. I just left them alone.
Yeah, the thing here to get them look more glass-like is the is the IOR setting in Sketchfab.
Okay.
And so when you click on the glass material, I can't remember whether my example had, it did not have a glass in it.
I mean, there might be an IOR setting in just one of the,
Here's a thing from a previous semester. So this glass bowl, if we click on, or don't not click on it, if we go over to materials, bowl, right? Or so whatever, this is why you want to name your material. So it's not material 1, material 2, material 3, but regardless, once you find the right material, down here under opacity, and down here under refraction, and down here under index of refraction, you see that now I can tune that. And so by default it's probably pretty low, which makes, again, when this means a value of 1 for IOR means that there's no bending of the light as it goes through the thing. It's just totally transparent, which it doesn't look like glass. Glass always has some sort of IOR. And so coming down here and being able to dial that in, you can see that now we get refraction happening. And so that's where that setting would be. Yeah, I didn't have the glass on in the example I did. And so in your 3D settings, in the materials, and then dialing down into the opacity section. Is there anything else I had to turn on here? I don't think so.
Yeah, I was playing around with that a little bit. That it could make them solid, or yeah. I had dialed it up a teeny bit in that in the opacity, one of them. And then there's a tint in there, right? Refraction.
Yeah.
Refraction was weird. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, there's only a little bit of usable
right.
land here, right? You don't want it at 1. You want it just a little bit so that as you move around, yeah, it's actually refracting the stuff that's behind it.
I just changed it a little bit, so if you go back to it,
Let's reload it.
it might be a little better. Could be worse.
Where's all my stuff? Yeah, a little bit. And then the situation here that is also not going to be really resolvable is when we have this kind of thing. So where we see glass behind glass, right? Because now you know enough to know that, like, if someone said, like, oh, I'm going to stack all these translucent objects on top of each other in this 3D render, you'd be like, whoa, slow down here, right? Because that's you're asking a lot here, right? Just think about the path of that photon to get through all that stuff. That's a lot of thinking that photon's going to need to do. And so you see that the default Sketchfab behavior is to just opt out here, right? The things behind, transparent things behind a transparent thing just don't get rendered, right? Their algorithm said, you know, like once the photon reaches the second transparent thing, just forget about it, you know, like, because it's a real-time rendering here, right? Right? Sketchfab is much closer to EV than Cycles because it's real time, right?
You can see it changed the wine glass, but not the bigger one. See the skinnier one.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's where you can see a little different.
Yeah. Well, they probably have 2 separate materials, right? Or do they? Yeah.
Separate materials.
Yeah.
So I just changed the one.
Cool. Excellent.
That's cool. I have something out there.
Yeah.
Something out there. Maybe someone will look at it.
Yeah, there's some sort of crazy feature where even like this, right? You can download a whole kitchen table and then print it.
Yeah, then print it.
Yeah. Right. Like not as like a model train miniature, but like a real functional kitchen table, right? It'd be crazy.
If you had a big enough printer. You know, I had, this is where I got the Lewis Chessmen, was off this site.
Say that again. What are they called?
It's called Lewis, Lewis.
These?
There they are, up there. These are scans of the actual pieces right there.
Oh, these are super cool.
And so I'm pulling them into Blender and cleaning them up, and I'm gonna see if I can print them and make a chess set.
That'd be awesome.
They're really cool pieces.
Yeah, I've not heard about these before.
See a little soldier there with his shield, and a king and a queen. There were red ones, and they were red and they were white, I think, originally. So they copied the white ones here. You could buy replicas from the British Museum, but man, they're expensive, like $300. Like, I'll just print them.
Yeah, that checks out. Even the replica thing is really expensive. Yeah, those are super cool.
And then, so there's a lot of museums that are on this website that.
Yeah.
So you can get like replicas of things from like 200 BC, because they'll have copied them, and you're like, oh, yeah, I'd like to have that pottery.
Yeah. I dove. There's a lot of really great stuff here. And I was, the one performance I did earlier over spring break, I was in Missouri at a conference, and sort of like weird, abstract electronic music thing, but I was doing the projected visuals, and part of that was the group my friends have is called Pincushioned, you know, like for sewing. And so I was just trying to download a bunch of historical artifacts and then procedurally adding pins all over them using Blender. And so I also did some work there, although the most of the time they're throttling this, is that I was able to use some of the AI tools to procedurally download a bunch of these things. So just sort of just suck down hundreds of models at the same time and then just dump them into Blender. So that was super cool. Yeah, there's a really great mammoth on here from one of the
I typed in woolly mammoth and got a bunch here.
yeah, one of the,
These are great.
yeah, a lot of amazing,
Low poly. There's a low poly one in here.
yeah.
You like a toy.
Yeah, and more institutions are putting these things up there as like a, archiving not only the 3D view, but like I said, we're getting closer to, the Phoenix Museum of Natural History downloading the mammoth skeleton and then reprinting. I mean, I'm not 100% sure about this. A lot of the skeleton stuff that's actually physically available to see in the museums, a lot of those are not even the actual bones. They're like replicas of the things, because, a lot of the skeletons are incomplete and whatever. But
These are free to download too.
yeah, all the cultural institutions are free.
There's some that are restricted, but most are
Yeah.
found available to download.
Yeah, it'd be really, I should think about that as a project for next semester in terms of like, grab.
And then pull it into one of these projects would be fun.
Right. And it,
I'm standing behind my table.
yeah.
That actually would have been funny. Rather than Mark, sitting behind my table, I have a woolly mammoth back there.
Here's Mark's.
Hello, my name is Marcus Tinney, and this is my final project for the semester. Starting us off, we will I'll just play the table render scene on its own, and then I will go over my shots. So here it is now. And don't worry about music. It is Kevin MacLeod.
Good old Kevin MacLeod. Where would open source music be without Kevin MacLeod? I hope he's getting taken care of, like
I mean, he's
financially.
still making things.
Putting it up available freely. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Actually, he had an actual like vinyl release of some of his songs.
oh really?
I picked that up.
Oh, I didn't know that. I will buy that. I mean,
I don't know if it's available anymore.
oh really?
Unfortunately.
Oh, good for him. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot to think about there. Like he's sort of made himself the default composer for every student project in the United States by making his music open source like that, right? So, yeah, when all of these people become, professional decision makers with budgets, right? Like, hopefully enough of them are gonna bring in Kevin MacLeod.
Good copyright-free space jazz. So the way I approached the scene was I did the exact same like render settings I had for the initial 10-second shot, except I did that exact same thing for 3 more shots. This took a really long time to render, but I made sure to plan accordingly, giving myself a lot of spare time, and I had this really big project of a self-portrait that I had to work on in another class, so I was kind of preoccupied with that. And I think one of the shots of these actually rendered the entire time and finished while I was working on it. But starting us off with the first shot, I wanted to focus on nice like smooth dolly shots. So this first shot is
So where were you at per frame? How long was it taking per frame?
Each frame took about like a minute and a half to 2 minutes,
Okay.
and each one's about 10 seconds long, so 240 frames.
Okay.
So a long time.
Yeah. I mean, a minute per frame. That's going to be right. You only get 60 frames for an hour, right? So that's a little under 3 seconds of footage, right? So I mean, the math here, the trade-off in terms of cycles versus EV here becomes really important in terms of working by yourself, right? Like working with a client and be like, okay, well, here's my price for an EV render, and then here's a separate, much higher price for a cycles render, right? Because I'm going to need to manage that and wrangle that and all of those other things, because it's not an insignificant amount of time difference, but the visual difference, depending on what you're doing, right? If these weren't glasses, they were just cups that were ceramic or something like that, right? We could get
We can do it in
EV, right? And so then, yeah, what kind of render decisions are iffy sort of things, right? The client comes to you and says, like, I want it to be a glass table in a glass room with then like orbiting energy balls above the glass table. And they, right. You're like, all right, well, hold on a second here. Right.
is a like a dolly in to the scene where we're just zooming in, going past the chair, going past the glass, and it just makes it feel more immersive. And all these shots focus on the candle because I've never done a like high poly to low poly thing before, so I think this is really cool. For the next shot, I wanted to do a dolly in the same direction, but it's going from left to right. So it's still from like kind of the same area, but it's a kind of sweep of the table and showcasing how it's laid out, and have it really showcasing that depth of field effect with the blurry chair in the front. For the third shot, I want to do like an above shot to really show the layout of the table. One thing I did not consider was the HDR background not really moving, so that does kind of mess it up a bit. I just thought it would work, but I didn't really think about that, and
Right. So allow me to once again emphasize this, right? Primarily, this is good for the reflection and the lighting, right? Right, because like in Kevin's tunnel as well, like when you did the realistic render, for the Painterly, the NPR Painterly one looked great. Why? Because it was also reducing the detail in the background. And so now the detail in the subject and the background was the same. In the realistic render, it really sticks out, right? Because the amount of detail on the table is like very visually distinct from the background, right? And then once you start moving anything, you run into this parallax issue where it's not it's not there.
I don't really want to re-render this, but from a stationary standpoint, I think it does look pretty good.
Right. So I mean, the quick and easy fix there is to like quickly make a floor, right? So that shot, right? You could have just put a plane there and whipped up some sort of texture on the floor that was close enough, and it would have been getting the same lighting, and then you would have had that wouldn't have mattered as much in that issue.
But I didn't realize until after it was rendered. And
Right.
I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Right. Like you see, my challenge every semester is like I show everybody the HDR technique, and then for stills, everyone's like, "Oh, this solves all my problems," right? But then as soon as you start moving the camera or animating anything, it's like, this.
And for the final shot, I kind of wanted to do like the same shot as like shot 1, but instead of pushing in, it's pushing back out. And it's also on the left side of the table. And I think it's really cool where it's like everything besides the candles out of focus, and then slowly the glass appears on the left, because I just think that looks really neat. It's just like this super cool model just appearing like basically out of nowhere, you know? And I just think it looks really neat. My personal favorite stills from all of these are the very first frame in shot 1, because I think it has a nice rule of thirds composition, keeping the chair in the foreground, still focusing on the candle, which is just off to the side, but still front and center. The second shot, I chose frame 57 because it still keeps that rule of thirds look while also still showcasing enough of the table in which you can still see everything that's available without it getting covered up by this chair that's in the foreground this time. For the third shot, I chose frame 107. This is the one that goes from the top view. I chose specifically this frame because it keeps mostly everything within the frame. Sure, everything does kind of spill out, like the edges of the table and some of the chairs, but it does keep a majority of the table within the frame. And for the final shot, I chose frame 195 because it's back to that rule of thirds look, but instead of focusing like just on the candle, it also brings some attention to the wine glass. And despite it being out of focus, it's still there, and it still looks just interesting in a way that I just can't really describe. Finally, here's the compositor setup for one of my non-photorealistic stills. We'll first showcase what that looks like. We have a nice cartoony look to everything, using the Kuwahara effects. I said it right without having to look it up. Let's go. Anyway, I used the grease pencil for the outlines, and I used the crypto object setting to get just the candle isolated, and in such a way that it renders both the background and the foreground as separate images, so I can bring it into Photoshop for like later editing. But I wanted to do as much as I could within Blender. I even added a nice little depth fog modifier to make it feel like mysterious and everything, because it has this nice sepia tone, and keeping the candle like red, like this is the main focus, just like my previous stills, except it still has this cartoony look to everything.
Yeah, really great composition here, right? The eye's immediately drawn to this. It's a very well done functional image, right? Where it's just like, this is the subject of this image. So really great use of this. Right here, remember the crypto part of it, I honestly not sure why they're using that terminology in Blender, right? It's a matte or a mask. Something in the technical implementation, I don't know, right? But that's, as you're looking for this or as you're thinking about doing this in other programs, the idea is we're just masking out a single object. We're creating a matte for a single object.
And I think
The other programs don't
really nice.
use the crypto terminology for some reason.
I love messing around with these features, but I do think I might mess around with Photoshop because I know my way around that a little easier, but I know how I can like get specific parts of a shot out like from the data of Blender into Photoshop for further editing, which I think is pretty neat. And this is my compositor setup for my second non-photorealistic scene. I went with a pixelated Game Boy look and everything, but this time putting a focus on the tablecloth table runner, making that blue. And I also made sure to put the pixelated filter on the crypto objects, so it doesn't have like sharp lines within the pixels. It still has that pixelated look. And I also did the same with the depth fog modifier, which adds a very interesting feel to this scene, like adding the depth on top of the bright saturated Game Boy colors. But over the semester, I learned quite a lot. I already know quite a bit about Blender, and there's still so much more to learn. But I definitely learned a whole lot within this semester. One of my personal favorites was this candle modeling high poly models with sculpt tools, and then figuring out how to make a feasible low poly model that keeps the details of the high poly model. I think that's really cool. Using volume modifiers, using the Bezier curve to make models. There's just so much creative freedom in Blender, and I can't wait to put all these skills to work on like my personal projects, as well as professional work. Speaking of, my plans for incorporating the skills that I learned within this class into my personal projects and professional work is I'd love to kind of like use it to just make characters. Like, I think that'd be fun. I do know a thing or two about animating and rigging characters in Blender, and using the techniques I learned here would definitely improve my ability. But of course, if they're animating, I need to animate with quads. I don't want to animate with tris, because that will distort the model in ways I wouldn't want. But I think it'd be really fun to like make characters with this, make interesting scenes and layouts. Using the skills I have now, I feel like the characters I can make are just so much better. Like, they don't even have to be high poly. It's just I had no way to make them fast, efficient, and just look nice overall using the like bevel modifier and subdivision surface, which I have been using before. But using the bevel modifier and subdividing certain faces just to keep things aligned, and so I don't completely destroy a project with a few clicks, you know? I'm going to keep learning Blender. I would really love to learn the other tools Blender has to offer, especially video editing, because that is one of my biggest passions. I love editing videos for my YouTube channel, mainly gaming videos. But if I can learn how to use Blender efficiently and make the video quality that I normally make using Premiere Pro, I would love to switch to Blender. I'm just not sure if the power's there or if I have the ability.
No, it's not there yet, right? This is definitely like a tacked on part of Blender at this point, right? Like the fact it has it at all is great, right? For putting like, for doing the video like this video. I have shot A, shot B, shot C. I need to line them up, slap on some music, and call it a day, right? Like, yeah, that seems like that's totally feasible. But the kind of stuff you're doing, the thing, you know, we have the film festival on Thursday night. We've just been going back and forth all week, trying to get everything all edited for that. I've been in Premiere the whole time, right? Because it's just, you know, it's a tool that's been developed for decades to do that, and it really matters there, right? I mean, will they get there eventually? Yes, but it's also not the main thrust of the program, right? And so, you know, I would say if I had to bet, you know, like the over-under is about 4 years out on whether or not, you know, like the Blender video editor is going to be where it needs to be for you to do your like hyper-edited YouTube style presentations, right? I think it's much more likely that some other open source tool rises to that Premiere Final Cut Pro level before this does. So
I know like DaVinci Resolve is like free and open source, but it's just like a whole another field. It's like, because it's using like nodes to edit, and I'm like, I don't understand how to do that. So.
Yeah, I mean that's just the VFX view in DaVinci. Once you get into the timeline view of DaVinci, it's pretty similar to Premiere. So like they definitely sequence that stuff out there. So yeah, you're if you want to get out from underneath the Adobe monthly fee, which is completely reasonable, then Blackmagic and DaVinci are, you know, like that's a real thing that's going to stick around. It would be worth your time to make that transition, yeah. Versus, you know, waiting for Blender to get good enough is going to be, it seems like a long wait.
Just yet. But the whole reason is because Blender is free and open source, and Premiere Pro is a monthly subscription at the least. And that's really expensive really fast. So having the ability to transfer my skills to Blender and learn Blender for video editing would be really cool, especially if I can incorporate 3D modeling within my scenes, which I have done before. I think it would be really fun to incorporate it into my videos and just learn video editing through Blender, because a nice free alternative, if I can make it work, that would be awesome. But I think that is all the time I have. Thank you so much for this wonderful class, Casey, and everyone else that participated. You've all been great. It's been a lot of fun helping others out and seeing how you've progressed over the semester, and I can't wait to see what amazing things you make with Blender in the future. But that's all the time I have, and for one last time, bye-bye.
Thank you, Marcus. Your positive attitude and willingness to help everybody in this class has been great. So thank you very much for being so willing to help everybody else out. And then, yeah, the node stuff that you've learned here, this helps you leverage DaVinci, right? In that their node stuff primarily runs left to right as well. And so a lot of what we did in the compositing workflow here is the fusion window in DaVinci. And so, again, the node names, a lot of them are different, but I've yet to see some sort of global node translation. Even just chart would be super helpful. I'll see if I can point some AI at that problem over the summer, because that would be super useful for a lot of people. Because once you understand conceptually what's happening, it's just a matter of like, what do they call the node that does this? Because I know what I need to do. I need a mat for this candle. But just getting to that is tough at the beginning. So, and then you have your Sketchfab.
Yeah, I also sent a photo of the self-portrait I mentioned.
On Canvas?
It's the, I think it's like webcam photo.
Oh, Okay, hold on. What class is this for?
This is for just art, like a drawing class.
Oh, okay.
It took a while because it was a halftone shading, but I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Good one. Good.
If you like look closely, it's just a bunch of circles.
So wait, did you do the shading?
I used an effect to get the
Okay.
halftone shading.
Okay.
And then I basically just I sketched it using like a projector, and then I just like colored it in like a coloring book for the next few hours while I was rendering my Blender projects.
Oh, okay, very cool. Nice. And you printed it out and everything too. Very cool.
No, I didn't print out like
That's
that.
canvas.
That's like a piece of paper that I
Yeah.
was drawing on the whole time.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see. I see.
I need to scan it, print more of them.
But the original piece of paper, there was a print.
I mean, yeah, there was a print. Like the original photo is like this big.
Okay.
Or something, and I used a projector to upscale it.
Oh, okay, I see.
Copied it.
And then I sketched it to just like with a very lightly with a pencil, and like, on a big piece of paper, and then I just colored on that.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's quite a process, but I mean, it gave you a very distinct result there for sure. And then which class was this for?
Just art. I think it was a drawing class.
For drawing class. With Mitch? Do you have Mitch?
No, not Mitch. It was I forgot her name.
Lena? Do you have Lena?
I think I got like a bunch of these like graded the other day. Oh, I'm on the right. Just trying to like quickly go into Canvas to find out.
Oh, and for the Sketchfab thing, it was that I re-uploaded it because like I made a new one and it looks better.
Okay.
It feels better as well. So yeah.
Tracy Welling.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. And was that in person?
Yeah, that's an in-person class,
Okay, cool.
but I finished it over the weekend.
Yeah, so Kate said she re-uploaded and now it works. So, yeah, once again, the
Hello,
the
class.
redo don't fix principle, like like you could attribute most of my career success to that, where it's just sort of like, oh, it didn't work. Oh, it works. Why did it work the second time? I don't know. It works. Stop asking me that. You know, yeah, that's a thing.
Finally reached the end of the semester, and I unfortunately could not get a portfolio started because my blend file that I worked all my stuff in hates me. So I had an issue with doing the actual camera movement and animation because my playback doesn't work. And I thought maybe it was an issue on my part, or maybe, I don't know, I tried like multiple different things. I even tried copy and pasting it, everything into a separate folder, and that did work, but it didn't like copy anything else. So this is kind of the only way I'm able to show my camera.
I mean, if you're in cycles, which I can't tell right off the bat, I mean, I think you are. If that's the case, then it just may be super, super slow, right? There's the setting in, right? Because once we start to animate things, right, then we're in a situation where real-time playback, no, right? And so then you have a decision to make. There's two options. One, wait and show all frames, right? I don't care how long it's going to take. Show me frame 1, then show me frame 2, then show me frame 3. Or option number 2 is skip frames. try to get close to the frame rate, and sometimes you may not be able to get close at all, and skip frames, and then try to actually show the actual FPS, which will look very herky-jerky, right? Because we're like literally skipping frames. But both of these are only for the real-time viewport, right? When you go to render, we're not going to render in real time, as we know. And so we'll just do 1, then 0, or 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and then put them together. And so I think that may be what's happening here. Doing the play blast thing, or doing a test render of just, do 24 frames and then playing it back. That right there, if this is the situation, you're doing something beyond the computer's real-time capabilities, which used to be way more of a thing, right? Toy Story 1, the entire thing, even though it looks kind of janky now, is way beyond what was real-time available there, right? Everybody had to work on these probably in like wireframe view, and then come back, then send something off to the Pixar render farm, then continue to work on other junk, and then check in next Wednesday to see what it looked like. And
the next Wednesday when they find out, I accidentally deleted everything.
right. All that sort of thing.
One guy who saved it.
Right. We're all, I mean, they're probably not making that mistake at Pixar anymore, but like, you get the idea.
My favorite story. That's my favorite bit from Toy Story. How it is like, I think it's deleted multiple times on accident or something.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
They probably have multiple people working on data redundancy there at this point, but.
Up until the Prince of Egypt, I think, but that one's like 2D animated.
Where it just got.
Yeah, someone saved it. Like she was working like remote, like at home, and she had a copy.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't think this is just a playback issue here. Like do a test render.
Movements, because everything just didn't work according to plan in regards to this. So I'm able to get it to move here, but when I try to have it play on its own, it wouldn't let me do it. And when I tried actually outputting the image, it would just outputting the multiple images to upload it to After Effects, it would just upload a single image. And I tried doing the video option as well, and I'm
Camera's still like locked or something to the position, and like the auto keyframe is still activated.
Yeah. I mean, we do have one camera. We are looking through that camera. I mean, this is still on.
But like it's like the camera's locked to like the camera, like to the viewport camera movement still.
Yeah.
So like if you were just to like look around the scene, it would move the camera along with the viewport. Is what I mean. Maybe that has something to do with it. Like you need to unlock it first before you can just view the animation.
Oh. I mean, I feel like I definitely have had it locked and still rendered at different points. I don't know if that's totally a thing. But yeah, you're doing images. This is going to a folder.
I just don't know why, like when the play button was pressed, like all the stuff showed on the timeline. That's the only thing I didn't understand.
what happened, and I just thought maybe my computer was unable to process everything because, or I just thought it was just an issue of my computer and Blender in general. But when I tried it just on a basic little thing, just a whole new folder, it worked just fine. So at this point, I was like, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, so at that point, copy and paste your Blender into a new file. It's possible you may have set some setting that's messing something up here. What you have in this render view looks good. This over here looks okay. But yeah, ultimately these are all problems solved by just sort of having more time to ask this question in class, so we could have taken a look at it.
Or I just thought it was just an issue of my computer and Blender in general. But when I tried it just on a basic little thing, just a whole new folder, it worked just fine. So at this point, I was like, I didn't know what to do, and that's kind of these three are kind of my cinematic choices, or they would have been, but if my blend file wanted to work. And I ran into the same issue when I tried working on the runner as well, because it would not function after a certain point. I don't know what happened with the computer. And here are my stills.
Okay, that one's brighter. Maybe we can see what's happening.
Because I really just like the ambiance of it all and the shading, or the shadows. And then I have this one as well. And as for the prompts we have, I learned a lot throughout the course of the semester.
Yeah, so the middle one there, this looks like a reasonably exposed image. The other one's really dark. Like it's really hard to see the stuff that you've made, right? Where that's our primary goal here at this point.
I learned a lot throughout the course of the semester. Before class even started, I didn't even know Blender or Substance or anything we worked with was a thing. And, you know, I'm very proud of myself and everything that we've built up to working in thus far. Especially like learning about all the tools and kind of just using each new tool that we use to develop better skills. So we got to like this point where we're able to model actual objects that you see in everyday life instead of just random building or random like blocky buildings. And a model that I'd like to work on in the future with the skills we learned thus far in the semester is I'd like to work on a cityscape or something like a I don't know, a living room. That'd be cool to make. An actual kitchen, like not just a kitchen table, but like an actual kitchen would be cool to design as well. I saw a video where somebody designed a whole library with like insane lighting and ambiance. I thought it was pretty cool, and they animated like every single book in there. It was so cool. But yeah, that's what I have, and I had a great semester looking at everybody's work, and that's it.
Okay, great. Here, let's just open your file once to see if there's something, at least then you can know whether it was a hardware issue or not. And then in our render settings, in here, here you got 0.
Oh, that would explain it.
Yeah. Were you?
Frame 0 to 0.
Yeah, frame 0 to 0. 0 minus 0, as we know.
I mean, that's only one frame to render.
Yeah. And so now this went through. There we go. Yeah, so now we're spitting out the frames. And then over here, in the folder, we should be able to see them. Yeah, there they are. Okay. Yeah, so you thought you had a timeline, but you didn't. You actually had smushed the timeline. So it doesn't really do a good job of showing you that, in that, you know, we have this. Once you see it now, you're like, oh yeah, that's the timeline, and this is not. But yeah, everything was not on the timeline there. So yeah, your thing here was at 0. That was definitely the issue. Because it would have been strange for your computer to do the stuff before this during the semester, and then all of a sudden totally not do this stuff. So, but if we were to look at it over here, Alejandro has responded with, wow, crying emoji. Yes.
At least the problem was fixed in the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Blender wasn't broken.
Cool. Right. And so here, right in a more well-lit environment, we can see the detail of the stuff that you put together. So yeah, again, even if you want to, your art style is like dark and moody from the standpoint of like showing off your work for people, maybe a more well-lit table environment would be good. And then bringing in, some emission on the candle here would be good. But this all looks like a very believable setup. And again, this is a great Sketchfab, a great tool. Hopefully, I'll check in on this over the summer. Sketchfab is like our Premiere situation where, like it's technically problematic because we don't know what's going on in some instances. And then also, it'd be great to be able to post things online and have them be interactable in 3D, but not have to be working on this proprietary platform, which Sketchfab is. Again, Sketchfab owned by Epic, the Fortnite company. So, regardless of your feelings about them, they're a company, right? And it'd be great to not have to work with them. And so there are some online open source GLTF viewers. Those used to be pretty crappy, and maybe there's a newer version that we could all use, which would be great. So that's one of my summer projects, is to look at some of the open source online portfolio tools to see what we could use there to get out from under Behance and to get out from under Sketchfab and those kind of things. So that would be my ideal. But, the answer to the question is like, is there an open source tool that's going to do this thing? The answer to that is like, yes, a version of something exists, but is it beyond that click threshold where it's like, the amount of like box clicking to get this thing to work is not acceptable, or at least sustainable? A lot of times, yes, that's the how can we make the open source tool usable, right? Blender is the exception here, this open source tool that has become this amazingly useful thing, right? Regardless of all the Blender gotchas, and there are a lot of them, right? The fact that the whole program used to be nothing but gotchas, right? Like the whole time I've been teaching, the past 13 years, Blender's been around, right? But for the first 7 years, it was like just it was nothing but gotchas, where it's just like, yes, this program does the thing, but what you have to do to make it do the thing is just not acceptable. And only within the last 5 years has it really risen to the level where it's like, okay, this is something I feel comfortable showing to other people. So here's Sean's. Sean didn't get a video up, but we can see all of his stuff here in Sketchfab. And so the glass thing here, this is what we're talking about, going in and adjusting that. You got a little bit of IOR in there. We see that like refraction happening. Maybe a touch more would be good. And then maybe thinking of a different, like an HDR, selecting one on Sketchfab that was maybe a little bit less flat, right? Where this is sort of the opposite of Alejandra's render, where hers was like so dark it was really hard to tell what's happening. Here, this is so brightly lit that it's just sort of like, it's kind of blah, right? A little bit more dynamic lighting across the surface would help, because there's something strange happening with the shadowing for this plate. I would look at the plate normals here, because this plate should be casting a shadow in this whole area, and it's only casting a ring there, which leads me to believe perhaps there's something wrong with the inverted normals of the plate, or maybe you just need to go into this material and check double-sided or something like that. But the silverware and look at the detail in the silverware there. Beautiful. Yeah, so the thing that sticks out here is the pixel density on the table, maybe a little bit lower than the other things. And so perhaps having a little bit higher density. So we did upload everything using that JPEG compression, right, from Blender, which is really handy. It took me, I should really make just a public-facing tutorial about that, because that was not easily discernible information. Here, once you get it up to Sketchfab, going in and maybe going back to Substance Painter and just rendering the color channel of your table or having, not render it, have Substance Painter output the texture at 4096, so that when I zoom in to the silverware here to admire your admirable silverware, the texture on the table holds up there, right? And once you got it up on Substance Painter, you can go in there and swap out one texture at a time if you wanted to. And so that would be the main thing that sticks out here. And then coming in and getting some emission, doing a little bit of this probably needs a sub-D surface, right? So that it's a little bit smoother there. But yeah, you got your stuff happening there. Cool. Very nice, Sean. And then let's see, what else is up here? Oh, here's Adrian's. Let's make sure we play his.
Hello, my name is Adrian Negula, and here is my cinematic video for my final showcase of the table. I decided to use one of the old techniques that was shown this semester, which was use an empty and the camera to track the empty. For as you can see, the empty is you cannot see it, but the empty is rotating, which helps the camera just move around, just like in one of our old projects. I decided to take on that approach on one of our old lessons to show.
Yeah, great. I mean, that's a legit camera move, moving around. Like if you had some sort of dolly or crane arm kind of thing, you could do that. The thing is there, like you see that the background is only there for part of it, right? And so in the past, when I've had to do something like that, actually use a big cylinder as the background, right? If you put a bevel on a cylinder, then you have this wall that's the whole way around, but it's not going to have corners and stuff in it.
So I decided to balance it but with using the dials of the size and stuff like that, and the eccentric photograph or something like that.
Yeah, that looks very painterly.
Basically, I made it where it looks like kind of like an old oil painting, kind of, or a painting.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like an NPR. Next one. Oh, the wrong one, sorry. Yeah, my thing is a bit less. It's just trying to show a wrong one. There we go. Here's the pixel art, what I call pixel art, with the NPR pixelated. I decided to make sure that it's not too pixelated, where it's hard, like one bit, that drastic, so it's not that drastic or anything, so that if it's one bit, you will not know what it is. So I decided to tone it to maybe retro, kind of like maybe GameCube kind of times of pixels, where you can see the face, but it's just pixelated.
Yeah, so depending on what you're doing here, in order to get to something that looks, of that time, probably having some outlines, right? So grease pencil into the pixelate would allow you to at least have the outlines for the object, because that's one of the things with pixel art is a lot of times you have this border in order to help to, give it contrast against the background. And then the posterize, because the pixelation is a time when we had less resolution. We also had less colors. And so that's what the posterize does there. And so if you have pixelation with all these colors, then it's a style, but maybe not exactly like the style from beforehand, right? Because here, the sort of detail in it versus here where you can see like each pixel is a little bit more directly defined.
And then, yeah, this one looks a little weird for some reason. In my opinion, this is actually looks pretty nice. You can see the nice, beautiful rainbow or blue kind of glow from the candle, and then you can see the glow of the cup. What's next? So what I learned of this semester, I learned a whole lot of things. One of the ones that I do remember pretty well was the empty, using an empty for your camera, the cloth to the cloth modifier of some sort to make like things like napkins or tablecloths. I also learned the screw modifier to make like cups like this or something with just ease without having to spend hours making a cup that is not even symmetrical. I also learned how to do the high poly and low poly.
Right, so things with radial symmetry, right? And it's that taking a profile and then spinning it.
Candles, which with high poly would be with sculpting tools, and then low poly is just with an add-on to be able to magnetize to the walls of the high poly. And the difference between those two would be low poly is not very detailed, high poly is very detailed.
Mm-hmm.
And then, how am I going to use these skills in my own art practice and professional work? I would use these to be able to make digital 3D assets of various qualities, and also different angle capture, photo capturing, all that stuff for video game companies or sets convention. And basically just create all the assets of characters, environments, just all that jazz that makes, like, for example, Mario Odyssey looks so amazingly good. Just like wow. Since Mario Odyssey was one of the really good games at the time that were really good looking. And honestly, I think number one on at the time of Nintendo Switch. And another good game, honestly, I would say is Mario 64. A lot of people like that game. What are you going to build, model, and make next to continue to grow your work? I honestly am not sure, but honestly I will say it will be something honestly pretty good. That's what I think. I say
I appreciate your honesty. That's funny. It's just like a generational thing. It's definitely of your generation to honestly say exactly what you honestly mean. You can assume that I am speaking honestly about everything at this point. Like I'm telling you what I actually think, although maybe not in every instance. Keep you on your toes, honestly.
Another environment like this with this project of kitchen table, and basically it was an honor to be in the class with y'all. I hope y'all have a good day and see y'all later. Bye-bye.
There you are. We just finished yours up. Looks really good.
I had a lot of trouble doing what I gotta do. I just wanted to say that I'm gonna have to go already.
Okay. All right. No, it looked great. Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Awesome.
Teaching us also.
Yeah. Congratulations. And last but not least, I think Brianna didn't have a video, but she did put something up on. Is it on Sketchfab? Let's see here. Oh, of the candle and the table. Windows won't open these images? Always a wonderful new wrinkle Windows has here. Oh, now I won't open images. How about with this program? There we go. Crazy. Yeah, I mean, I had a teacher tell me this decades ago. Like, if you want to do this work with computers, when it doesn't work, you really got to adopt this attitude of like, huh, look at that. It didn't work this time, right? Am I able to channel my inner Zen master and do that every time the computer doesn't work? No, absolutely not. But if you're going to do this stuff a lot, I have to agree, just from a standpoint of like your continued cardiac health, just trying to. You can't let it bother you. You can't let it get to you. Does it get to me sometimes? Yes, it does. But sometimes it doesn't. And so keeping that in mind. Be honest, yeah, it looks good. You got some things in place here. You just need some more lighting. Again, show us the work. Show, like, we want to be able to see what's happening there. Cool. Okay, everybody, it's been a great semester. I talked last time about this stuff coming up. Next semester is 185, 240, which is cinematography, and 200, where we're putting video games together. Now that you have a bunch of modeling skills, if you're at all interested in making games, 200, you're ready to roll for that one in terms of doing a bunch of stuff in there, right? Again, we have this whole system now for game design, so we're not doing coding directly there. We're focusing on animating in these game environments, but being able to build your own game environment, great. You can hit the ground running there. So if any of you want to get into any of my classes in the future, even if they're full, please just reach out to me on email and I can get you in, right? That's sort of the standing policy. Once you've made it through your first race, then you get the ticket into the other ones. So, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to the fall in the new building, which, I'm 80% sure is going to happen at this point. There's still a bunch of stuff that needs to get in place over the summer that, unfortunately that stuff depends on the international microchip industry. So my, my concern does not lie with the internal GCC institution, but rather the larger institution known as society make it to August? Question mark. We'll see. So yeah, it was a really, really great semester. I had a lot of fun this semester doing all of this. I think, I'm glad to hear everybody learned a lot. That was the point there. And so, not only about doing this stuff, but, about the life decision to do this stuff, how you want to engage with that. There's a lot to understand there. So going forward, I'll make a new Discord channel for the summer for everybody in all the classes to sort of stay in contact if you like. And so I'll put that up before the end of the week. And then everybody please, consider coming to the film festival. Will be, the work from the different film classes and animation classes will all be showcased at that event. And that event is Thursday night at, here it is, 5:30. I had previously said 6 on a post. Notice that it is 5:30 in the Performing Arts Center. So a lot of great work from a lot of other students being showcased at that event. Should run, I don't know, like 90-ish minutes, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, yeah. And then convocation for those of you graduating is on Friday at Desert Diamond Arena. So I'll be at that as well. All the residential faculty are at graduation every year. And so, yeah, it's inside at an arena. So that's, yeah. There were a couple of years where we were outside at a baseball park. And one year that was fine. It wasn't brutal. But the other ones was, that was warmer. This year that would have been a disaster because it's supposed to be like 107 on Friday or some. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully this is a blip. Right. It'll cool down. Tell me it's going to cool down. Hopefully, I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, I hope to see most of you again in the classes here coming up. And yeah, awesome. Oh, the other thing, the videos on YouTube I'll mark as unlisted, but the the lecture search page, which has links to all of the lectures, will remain up. And so that's what you want to bookmark to maintain access to all the stuff. And so that's, again, in all of the projects. There we go. This site, right? And so not only is it the lecture search, but you can get to all of the lectures here, right? With every weekly timestamp, and then this will link to all of the videos, because they won't be publicly available on, they'll be unlisted on YouTube. It's going to be the policy going forward. And so this should stay put, I can't guarantee forever, but like until someone makes me take it down. So it should be able to stay up for, I don't anticipate anyone asking about it. So that should stay up there. Because I think this was the first semester I had this lecture search thing happening and functional completely. And then I think a good way to do this would be to reset with another page each semester, I think is going to be my plan. Oh, and then the other thing is take I would ask you to please take the survey. I linked to that last night, right? Didn't I? Yeah. And so that is just a Google form. It is complete wherever it is. It's completely anonymous, right? So it doesn't ask for your email, and I don't know who said what. And so I would just ask for your candid responses about the class in there. I need to keep track of that. I mean, I do that regardless, and then the institution wants to see that I think about what I'm doing. And so that's one way to, show them that, like, yes, I have thought about what I'm doing, and here's some feedback about it. So please take that this week so that I have that database of stuff to draw on. Okay, awesome. For the last time this semester, let's sign out and look forward. And thank you, Kevin, for bringing donuts. I really appreciate it.